Well, that is true. The investigation is ongoing. But again, one of the reasons that this was an unusual interview, and there's a lot more in there that we have not heard before, and you're going to get to see it coming up. But right now, we should go through what we've already heard. Let's bring in retired Chief Jim Bierman. He's the former police chief here in Redlands, California. He's also president of the Police Foundation down in D.C. And retired Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey, friend of the show, served 20 years with the LAPD. It's good to have both of you here, Chief. Thank you, Cheryl, as always. Let's be fair and clear. One, by all indications, the family is not under any umbrella of suspicion from federal authorities. They have been doing everything voluntarily. The attorneys very pressing on that point, and also that they are not in a place in terms of conclusions that the investigators are not. They're not calling it terrorism either. But there is one point. The lack of clarity for the council and the family based on facts that this may or may not be them. Chief, from what you know of those investigating, do they have any question whether or not it was this man and this woman who entered that building?
There's no doubt whatsoever that these are the people responsible for this. And the attorneys are paid to represent the family. They're paid to try to pitch a particular perspective. But the one attorney that says that there's some indication that they were found handcuffed in the backseat of the car. Apparently, he hasn't seen the video that the rest of the world has seen, where this woman was removed from the SUV by the police on video. You can see it for everybody to watch. And she's clearly not handcuffed. And this was at the end of the pursuit where she and her husband had been firing assault weapons at the police officer. So there's no doubt that these are the people responsible.
And they say the family has come to terms with it. A little bit of this may be lawyer play. I mean, that is what they are. That is the business that a lawyer is in, and that's why you hire them. But it also goes to the question of, well, it may not have been just them, right? Investigators are still wanting to know, well, who knew? Because they have some of the questions that the attorneys do. How did they learn how to use these bombs? How did they learn how to go in there and shoot? And you can argue their effectiveness and their discipline, but they still killed 14 people, and it could have involved more help on different levels. Right, Cheryl?
Right, and I think it's very difficult for anyone to say what another adult will or will not do, right? We know these people, and we interact with family members in a way, and we see them in a way that is very foreign to what we now know about these people, right? And so I understand why the family is in a bit of denial, but I don't think anyone can say with certainty what someone will or won't do.
Also, I don't want to project onto the family what the attorneys were saying with respect to the case, right? That's their business, is sussing the facts. Family, again, has been forthcoming with investigators, and that's important because of the atmosphere in the community right now of doubt. 90-pound woman probably couldn't have done it. Cheryl Dorsey, in your experience, how many diminutive women have you seen capable of doing very terrible things?
Well, listen, I've never fired an assault weapon, but I do know that for a firearm, which I have fired, you only need 2 pounds of pressure. So to pull a trigger, you don't need tremendous upper body strength. You don't need to have special knowledge. All you need to know how to do is just squeeze and pull. And so certainly at any, 90 pounds, 100 pounds, you can do that.
And you need something that doesn't weigh anything except extremely on your conscience, which is the desire to kill innocent people, which was also exhibited here in horrible fashion.
Right.
Another big question. Why aren't the investigators calling this terrorism? If they believe the guy was radicalized, if he had this arsenal in his house after what was done, is this just about clinging to the specifics of that definition, that you have to show their intent was to scare the government or the public at large?
Well, in one of the press conferences yesterday, the assistant director for the FBI was talking very clearly about a very strict definition for terrorism that the FBI uses. And I think they're going to be very diligent in making sure that before they use that term, they're going to want to make sure that they have absolute proof that it fits that definition. I think for everybody else, certainly the police officers involved in this, and I think the general public at large, that train has left the station. I think everybody, how do you ignore the facts of this case, of the assault weapons firing on the officers, the amount of ammunition, the pipe bombs,
the radicalization,
it's just,
if that's an aspect of
right.
it.
I mean,
if you take that out, why do they care, though, Sergeant, at this point? The guy and his wife are dead. They're not going to make a case, at least not against them.
Well, see, for me, Chris, I have a completely different belief about this situation. I think this really is a Christopher Dorner situation with a twist to it. I think that this is really about workplace issues.
Christopher Dorner, as you know, for you, if you don't remember out there, he was also here in California and led a huge manhunt. Very dangerous guy. He had been an officer. Cheryl.
And so there was tremendous planning that went into that whole thing when Christopher Dorner felt a grievance with the department. He spent many, probably months and years tracking the family members. So to think that these people spend an inordinate amount of time preparing somehow means that it can't be work-related doesn't ring true for me. I think that probably because there was an ongoing situation in the workplace, and maybe every time he felt offended, he went home and bought another box of ammunition. He prepared another pipe bomb. Because unless and until you've gone against a superpower, and I have, the LAPD, and you have tried to do everything the right way, and you don't get any cooperation from your supervisors because they wear you down and ground you down, you do things that are out of your character.
Understood. No, understood. And to be clear, we're pushing the discussion because that's what you want to do, because people have questions about whether or not it's terrorism. But to be clear, the investigators have questions as well. I know it's frustrating to many, but they are not ruling out a workplace component to this. And that's one of the questions that remains. Chief, Sergeant, thank you very much for being with us. We'll talk more about the other parts of the interview, but let's remember why so many people want this to be taken as seriously as possible, including if that means calling it terrorism. Because those of the people and the families will never be the same after this. 14 lives taken, 17 more, now 21 more, still fighting for their lives. That's why there are calls to remember the people who are on your screen right now and who we will show you through the show. These people will never get to hear this discussion, and their families have to live with what happened. So we're going to show you them to remember, and we're also going to talk about how we can stop this going forward with a local lawmaker. Stay with us.
New day.